Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of World of Sharks, a podcast all about sharks, their relatives, and the underwater habitat that they call home, brought to you by the Save Our Seas Foundation. My name is Isla, I'm a scientist and science communicator for the Save Our Seas Foundation, and every episode I have the absolute pleasure of sitting down with world-leading experts in shark science, conservation, communication and storytelling to take you on a deep dive into a different part of the wonderful world of sharks. Now, we do like to have fun on this podcast and talk about cool species, of course, but we also aim to raise awareness of the multiple threats that sharks, rays, skates, and chimeras are facing in the modern world. Collectively known as the chondrichthyans or the cartilaginous fishes, sharks and their relatives are one of the most threatened vertebrate groups on the planet. And there are a myriad of reasons why, many of which we've covered on this podcast, from overfishing to the fin trade and climate change. But one of the topics we've not gone into in great detail is marine pollution. We did do an episode on microplastics with Dr. Alina Viksorek. I believe that one is episode 22 if you want to go back and find that. But the term pollution extends to much more than just plastics, as you'll find out in this episode. In the relatively short time that we've existed on Earth, the human species has really left its mark. In other words, we have dumped a whole lot of stuff into the sea. Some things that we can still see the evidence of with our own eyes, like plastics, macroplastics. But perhaps more terrifying, there are a lot of things that could be considered invisible dangers. And scientists are only just starting to understand now the long-lasting impacts that these substances can have on both the marine environment and the life that lives in it. There has been a fair bit of research on the effects of marine pollution on animals like cetaceans, whales and dolphins, and in some bony fishes. But a big question mark still hangs over sharks. And given that many species of shark are top predators, or can be found pretty high up the food chain, you could probably assume that they are pretty susceptible to marine pollutants, as we also know that they tend to accumulate the higher up the food chain that you go. So it's safe to say that it's pretty important that we investigate and try to understand more about the long-lasting effects that these pollutants can have on shark health and survival. For today's episode, we have invited fish biologist and Save Our Seas Foundation project leader, Franco Cristiani, onto the pod to talk all about his fascinating research into this subject. Franco is investigating the effects of harmful pollutants on chondrichthyans using the American elephant fish as a model species. Now, if you've not heard of this species before and are thinking, what on earth is that? Fear not, we do talk quite a lot about them in this episode, and we find out all about how weird and funky and cool they are. They're effectively a deep-sea species with a long, flexible snout which looks and operates like an elephant's trunk, which is just so gloriously weird and wonderful, and that's not even the most bizarre thing about them, but I'm gonna let Franco tell you about that. But briefly, they are a species of chimera, a close relative of sharks who fall under the umbrella of the chondrichthyans and provide a perfect study species for Franco to investigate the presence and potential negative effect of pollutants on the reproductive and immune health of other cartilaginous fishes. This research forms part of Franco's PhD, which he is studying for at the National Patagonian Center for Science and Technology in Puerto Madryn in Argentina. This PhD is the culmination of a lifelong passion for sharks, and you can really hear it in the way that Franco talks about his work. He has a lot of knowledge about sharks and their relatives that comes from not only his studies, but years of experience volunteering and working for shark conservation projects around the world, and his determination to work on solutions for many of the large and complex problems facing sharks, which includes pollution. Franco believes in the integrative way of working between scientists and other stakeholders, such as fishermen, tourism agents, park rangers, educators, and communicators, in order to find comprehensive solutions and generate knowledge concerning sharks and the marine environment. And he mentions this on the episode, but as a biologist, he feels strongly that he has the responsibility of not only publishing in scientific journals, but also raising awareness in the general public, which is a sentiment that I think a lot of scientists who listen to the podcast will feel. In this episode, we discuss the potential impacts of marine pollutants on sharks, just how big of a threat pollutants pose to marine life, and what we at home can do to help the issue. We also learn all about the bizarre but beautiful elephant fish, the amazing and vibrant ecosystem on Franco's doorstep in Argentina, why he chose sharks over dinosaurs, and why he carries out most of his fieldwork in the dead of night. We had a lot of fun recording this episode, and I'm certain you'll enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoyed having it. And you will learn a lot as well. So without further ado, grab your favourite hot beverage in a plastic-free receptacle, of course, and let's dive into our episode. All right, so hello, Franco, and welcome to the World of Sharks podcast.
Hello, Ayla. I'm really glad to be here.
We're so glad to have you. We were just chatting before the podcast started about how interesting your project is and how excited I am to learn more about it and find out more about marine pollution, about the American elephant fish, about the place where you live. I am so excited to get into it, and we're so grateful for your time. But before we get into all of that, we like to get to know you a little bit better. And our first question is one that we ask every single guest on the podcast. And that is, do you have an experience with the ocean that stands out for you as particularly special or memorable? And I have to add the particularly just because quite often I'm speaking to people that have had a lot of ocean experiences and have a lot of ones that could potentially be memorable. But do you have one that kind of stands out for you?
Well, yes. I think it's difficult to choose one, but if I have to stay with one, I would say like the first time I traveled to Galapagos Island and went diving with the hammerheads. That was a feeling and something amazing. It's being in that ocean and all full of fish and the waiting, and the diving guide was like, oh no, the few days ago that they weren't sharks around, and so we might not see and all that mystery, like I'm going to see them or not. And suddenly I got lucky and saw like 7 hammerheads, a Galapagos shark also, and that dive was something I will never forget.
Wow, that is something that's been on my bucket list for a really, really long time. How come you got to go to the Galapagos? What were you doing out there?
Well, I was a student in the university studying biology, and on my first years, after two years, I was like, okay, this is too much book. I need to see the sharks, I need to get contact with them. So I just planned a solo traveling through Central America, and like there wasn't a place I said, okay, I will go here. It was like, okay, let's see what happens. And suddenly, yes, I end up in Galapagos, which was, I liked to know the place of like the mecca of biology, and all full of sharks. And I just went there. I spent all the few savings I got at that moment and made that dive. That was amazing.
Incredible. Yeah, you're totally right. Like as a young biologist or zoologist, or even just someone who's passionate about like the natural world, the Galapagos seems like this kind of, I don't know, this mecca that you need to make a pilgrimage to at some point in your career.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people have it in the bucket list, but just go for it because you will not get disappointed.
Okay.
It's incredible.
All right. Well, that's me told. I need to just go out and do it. Don't think my bank account would be too happy, but yeah, I'll come to Argentina first, and then I'll head to the Galapagos.
Yeah. It's nearby.
But no, it's such an amazing experience, and I've seen pictures of the hammerheads there, and yeah, just a spectacular place. But you're clearly very, very passionate about sharks and all of their relatives. But when did you first discover that passion for sharks?
Since I have memory, I think since I was very little, like a child. I mean, a lot of kids are passionate about dinosaurs in the beginning, right, when they're childs, or big animals and that kind of stuff. And in my case, it was a weird fascination with sharks. You know, I don't know, I saw movie Jaws and it wasn't scary, you know, it was like, oh, look at that animal, you know, and I have like books for coloring, you know, when I was very little, and I was obsessed also to have a jaw. Nowadays, it's like I wouldn't do it, you know, like knowing, but I don't know, everything about shark were like fascinating for me. And so my parents, my grandparents always, like, if there was something about shark, they got me. So I have from toys up to whatever it comes to your mind about sharks. It was from since I was very, very little.
So your parents, they weren't surprised when you became a shark scientist then?
No, exactly. It was like step by step, and I start growing, and the passion always continue, and suddenly I was getting older and start to think about, okay, what I would like to study or what I would like to do. And since I was 12, we went on a trip with my family to the Patagonia in Argentina. It's a beautiful place with sea. And over there, I just spoke with a guide and talked a lot about biology and everything. I was like, I want to do that. I love sharks. I want, so you have to study biology. Okay, I will study biology. Where? Here. And this place is like more than 1,000 kilometers from the city I was. So it was like, okay, mom, dad, I will leave house to study here. Okay, no, well, they hoped that after some years, like the idea came to end, but no, suddenly I was 17 and I was, okay, let's go and see where I'm going to live, see the university. And luckily I counted with a lot of support from my parents, and things just were really nice, and start studying biology, and always with sharks in the mind.
That's really special, is to have that passion that's sort of kept with you for your entire life. On the topic of your PhD, you're studying how human-generated marine pollution is affecting chondrichthyans, so sharks, rays, chimeras, skates. But why was this topic important to you?
Actually, I was in this program with the great whites, and I applied for this because I saw the proposal of the project, and it was, oh, this looks really, really interesting, because it was like to assess pollution, but look in the physiology of the animals, to see what was the effect of pollution in chondrichthyans. I said, okay, I will apply it, but without hope that I was going to be chosen, you know. And actually, when I came back from one of the Galapagos Island trip, I went on the emails, and I got the email that said, okay, you got the PhD proposal. And it was like, okay, now after 3 years of living out of Argentina, I have to go back. But yeah, it was like, I always thought that if I had to go back to the academy or to do some science, it was going to be with a topic that really matters. Not matters, but like that can be applied in a current problematic. Yeah, we are doing so much harm in so many ways, and there's a lack of information also with these topics. I also felt attractive for the directors of the project. That's also really important to know that, okay, who's going to lead me it's a good scientist, or good scientist. That's really important. And so I kind of like say, yes, I will do it. I will start the PhD and get to in the world of pollution.
Yeah, and here you are. And a lot of people forget that. That's a really good point. The people who are your supervisors or your directors, that's just as important as the project title is, a lot of people get carried away with, which species they're going to be looking at or what the topic is. And while that is important, you always want to make sure that you've got the right team, because you're going to be working with them for years, and they're the people that are going to guide you through that. But when we say human-generated marine pollution, what kinds of things are we talking about?
Well, it's a lot of stuff. Like pollution, being very general, it's all substances or things that are human created that ends up in the ocean. It could be directly that they reach the sea, or indirectly, but are all substances that can affect the nature and well-being of species. But that is what we think about pollution. And someone thinks about pollution, the first thing that it comes to mind is plastics, because it's something macro and that we can see and we can see with our own eyes, and nowadays with all the technology and the medias and everything, the impact that a footage or a video can have of tons of plastic floating around. So we relate pollution with plastics nowadays, right? But we need to understand that it's a little bit more bigger than that. It's not just plastic. I mean, it is a really big problem, plastic, but there are also other pollutants, like persistent organic pollutants, what I think are the invisible pollutants, because we don't see them. They are just compounds, substance. There are pesticides, insecticides, herbicides. There are a lot of things that we've been using for decades, and despite most of them, they were prohibited already because they are known the effects that could have in wildlife and in the ambient itself, but we are still having them. And we are still creating new ones to supplant the ones that are prohibited. And until those compounds are assessed correctly, we don't stop. It's like a wheel that is never going to stop.
Yeah, that's a problem, right? Is when you imagine rubbish and things, you imagine people like picking it up and clearing it away and putting it in the bin. But a lot of this stuff that you're talking about, a lot of the chemicals and everything that we were using decades ago are still cycling around the oceans. They're in the bodies of the things in the oceans, and so they're kind of going back into that. It's just all cycling around. It's kind of not really going anywhere. And yeah, it's scary to think of the stuff that we were using in the past and the impacts that we now know that that's had on, not just marine life, but also ourselves as well. And to think, how much other stuff that we just don't know what the effects of that is still around. It's quite scary to think about.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite scary and like mysterious also somehow, because it's like, okay, are we all going to have cancer or what? One of the most questions everyone has, like when they think pollution, is like, okay, I will have cancer if this is polluted, or can I eat this? Every time we think about pollution, we think on how it will affect us, like humans, right? And I think that the topic is never addressed, trying to see how it affects other animals, other wildlife. I mean, we are all here connected. The well-being of other species, indirectly, it's also good for us. And it's like, okay, no, if this concentration or this amount of substances is not damage for us. Everything was like that. It's like, okay, no, and this particular pollutant it's safe below a certain concentration. And meanwhile, you have all from invertebrates to vertebrates and all those compounds going from one to another one. And yeah, it's quite scary. But we always had this conception of, okay, the ocean is enormous and it's diluted and everything, but the species, they don't live in the middle of the ocean only, they move a lot and they make use of coastlines and shores and bays. I mean, the dynamic is way more complex than we think it is.
Like totally. And I completely agree with you. And a lot of the animals that we're talking about, a lot of the nature we're talking about, they didn't have a choice in this. They didn't create the chemicals, they didn't dump them into the ocean, but they're suffering some of the worst impacts from it. And just like you said, the whole way that the ocean operates, all the processes, all the life in the ocean, it's not simple, right? It's pretty complex. So you've got animals moving around, you've got animals utilizing different spaces, and we just don't know how these pollutants are moving around this space. And the thing that you're looking at is how pollutants can affect the immune and reproductive health of chondrichthyans, which is something I don't believe that we really know that much about at all. If anything, like, what do we know already about what the impacts can be? Because I imagine there might have been some studies done on like other marine animals, maybe like particularly cetaceans. I don't know if I'm right in that, but...
Yes, there's quite a lot of knowledge in general stuff. When we start getting into details, it's very difficult get to know, like, okay, these compounds makes this and that, or this particular population is suffering this. It's very difficult to study the effects of particular pollutant, because at the end, there's not just one pollutant in the water. It's more like a soup of things. So it's very difficult. And when we get to study sharks, it's very difficult to have sharks in captivity, or if you can have them, it's just small sharks and small rays. Going back to the answer, what we know is that, and speaking about persistent organic pollutants, for example, that is all this group of insecticides and a lot of compounds that are used in the cities and, well, in places where a lot of industry or farming, all those compounds are really persistent, and there's a lot of studies that have seen that they be accumulating in top predators mainly. Why is that? Because it gets in the food chain, and if you have long-lived animals, for example, that live for a long time and they are eating a lot, they are getting all these contaminants and accumulating them in certain organs. We know that sharks, as top predators, they are prone to accumulate a lot of these substances. And the thing is that they don't metabolize it that easy. Those compounds, they are like very lipophilic, and so they kind of get attached to the liver or to the spleen, to the gonads. So it's very complex, though, because once they are there, they can start acting and mimicking with natural enzymes, for example, or hormones in the case of the reproductive system. So all the natural molecules that basically make us work, that regulates our reproductive cycle or our immune response, and all those kind of mechanisms that happens in our body, they are regulated with hormones or different enzymes and everything. And these compounds, they have the characteristic of mimicking this action of the enzyme. So all those things can have a really disbalanced activity in our organism, in the sharks and marine mammals.
Mm-hmm. So it can be pretty detrimental then. That's their like core life functions that you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you have something inside you that affects your fitness, your reproduction, your capability of having offsprings, and your immune system, it would all affect your survival. No? But the thing is that there's like a big lack of information also of how are this process. We know they are there, and there's a lot of research that have measured and have detected these compounds in different tissues, from muscle to gonads, liver, even gills. But it's very difficult to assess the mechanisms which are involved and how they are interacting. What science knows is that most of these effects are like for long-term exposures. There's a phrase that I learned not long ago, that it says that the dose makes the poison, right? So if you start thinking, like, most substance can be poisonous, it just depends on the amount, on the dose. So that's when we start getting alarmed, when we start seeing big amounts of these compounds. I think that we are in a moment that we start seeing like early alerts, or we are trying to find these early indications in different species. In my case, I'm focusing in chondrichthyans, of course, but we try to see these early alerts to say, hey, this kind of pollution is going to bring this and that consequence. it's kind of difficult, but it's not that when we talk about pollution, it's like, okay, this animal is very polluted and it's going to die right now. No, maybe it's a little bit more complex. Maybe that animal is going to reproduce, but maybe not as well as if it wasn't contaminated. And something that we do know is that there's a big amount of transfer, like maternal transfer to the offspring. So already when they are born, they already have a particular amount of pollutants in their body. And that is like, oh, wow. So the survival and the reproduction is being compromised.
Yeah, like a domino effect, even like
Exactly.
Yeah, it just like it reminds me of a lot of different things. Right, for example, we have a resident pod of orca that live on the west coast of Scotland here, so killer whales, and one of the females of that pod washed ashore, and during the necropsy they had to classify her as toxic waste because of the concentration of PCBs. I've forgotten what that stands for. You might know better than me.
Polychlorinated biphenyl ethers.
There we go. That's why we have the experts on the podcast. But yeah, there was such a high concentration of PCBs that they had to label her as toxic waste. But of course, you can only make the assumption that that's what caused her death. I think as well it kind of harks back to what you were saying earlier about people imagine the ocean as this, huge vast space. There's so much space in which these chemicals can go, and so they're diluted. But the ocean is we've put so much into the ocean that it's kind of almost at capacity. Like we're finding microplastics in the deep sea, for example, in fishes, in the Antarctic and the Arctic. So it is kind of reaching into all the nooks and crannies.
Exactly.
We're going to find out in a little bit what you're doing and kind of how you are answering that question with your research. But first, I wanted to take us on a little bit of a diversion, because I always like to hear about different places around the world where our podcast guests are working and where you're living. And you're based in the northeast of Patagonia in a city called, and I'm going to attempt to pronounce this. If I pronounce it wrong, please correct me. But in a city called Puerto Madryn.
Puerto Madryn, sí. Excellent.
Okay, perfect. But can you please tell us about the marine environment there and what kind of species of, chondrichthyan that we might find around there?
Yes. Well, it's an amazing place. I mean, as I told you, it was the place that I met when I was very young and defined me like, okay, I want to study biology. It's a beautiful place. But to describe it a little bit, Patagonia, when someone from outside Argentina hears about Patagonia, I think they just think that it's mountains, but the Patagonia is a very big region in Argentina, and it goes from the mountains in the west. But then if you go all the way to the east, to the shoreline, all the coast, Argentinian coast, it's also Patagonia, and it's kind of desert environment, and the coast is beautiful. It's amazing because there's very few big urbanized cities. I like to think that it's a place with none but less human impacted. But it's also really, really special in the marine area because from all the oceanographic characteristics, with a cold current coming from the south, with a warm current coming from the north, and all that creates a bloom of biodiversity, of food and different species, that it's amazing. So if I start naming all the marine animals that we have there, it's like you will say, okay, now Patagonia, it's on top of my bucket list, almost as Galapagos. But
it's already there. It's already on the bucket list. Don't worry.
But yeah, we have like species of whales, going from the most common one, that is the southern right whale, reaching more than 1,000 individuals, and they reproduce very near the shore, actually in Puerto Madryn, that is in the coast of a quite big gulf, but it's like a close gulf, and that makes like a very calm waters, and so attracts a lot of different marine mammals for the breeding season. So we have whales, we have sea lions, elephant seals, we have even penguins, massive colonies of millions of penguins coming every year to the same nest. And with sharks, we start finding taupe shark like a lot, and one of my favorites also the seven gill shark, that is like prehistoric. It's like being with a fossil. That is beautiful. We have the spiny dogfish. I'm trying to go through the English name of the species. The Gattuso. We have, well, a little bit northern, now going more in the Argentina Sea. We have a lot of species of sharks. And I mean, like, we are near about 50 species of sharks. So yes, we have a lot of different species of sharks.
But I put this question in here, but like, I think I said, is marine pollution a big issue like in that area? But I mean, it's a big issue everywhere, right? So maybe that's a bit of a silly question.
Yeah, no, it's not silly, because of course that in some places it's even greater, right? In a place they are putting all their waste in a river, for example, or in smaller areas, and they get more concentrated, or in places where there's even more farming activity. I mean, of course there's a difference, but yes, I think that nowadays there have been also detection of these pollutants in Antarctica, so that gives us an idea that no place is safe. But yes, of course, there's a difference of impact. And in the place where I am, we have a growing city. It's not like massive, but one of the main economical activities is an aluminium industry and also a big fishing port. Those factors and a growing city, urbanized, brings a lot of challenges in matters of pollution. And also that, like, our shore is not open sea. So the dynamic and the renewable of sediments and everything, it works different. So the impact, we think that it's quite considerable, and there's already been some studies in other animals, in invertebrates, in teleost fish also, and they are quite concerning. So now, yes, what we are trying to do is to see what is going on with chondrichthyans.
But the species that you're working the most closely with is something called the American elephant fish, which I must admit, until I started doing the research for this podcast, I'd heard of them vaguely, but I didn't know much about them at all. And then I Googled them, which I would highly recommend our listeners to do, because they look like a kind of weird, like, space alien
exactly,
type thing.
Yeah.
But for our listeners who have also never heard of this species, can you describe it?
Well, yes. I will admit that also at the first impression with this particular species, it was like, oh, it's really ugly. And it happens to a lot of people, like, oh, this is ugly, it looks like an alien, or like the reference are rabbitfish, ratfish, or ghostfish, like.
Yeah, I didn't mean alien in a bad way. Like, I didn't mean it in an ugly way. It's like a cute little alien.
yeah. Of course, like for us, yeah, but I get a lot of people that doesn't know the species, and when I talk to them, I show them a picture or something and said, oh, that's ugly. And I mean, no, look, it's beautiful. It has a lot of of color patterns, and I mean, it charms. But when I started to work with it, and I started to get more fond. And if you see it swimming, for example, it's beautiful. It have like really big lateral fins. It looks like wings, It's not like that kind of shark that uses a lot the tail for propulsion, but they swim with the lateral fins, and it's amazing. They are very, very benthic species. They're always well, not always, but they stay on the ground deep, on the seafloor. Also, that's why there's very few like images or video shooting, because it's very difficult to see them. I mean, they have night habits, they are very deep, they're very difficult to see. But in the case of American elephant fish, what is beautiful is that this particular species, as well as a few more, for example, there's like a sister species in Australia, very common. What they do is, like, for the reproductive season, they get near the shore to lay the eggs and to reproduce. In that moment is when, for example, particularly in the place where I am, in the season of spring and summer, is when all the recreational fishers start to catch it. And during my work, my sampling and everything, I got some footage that actually I'm about to upload it to the Save Overseas blog. I have some video of this elephant fish swimming, and I think that those kind of things make someone get more fond with a particular animal, right? If you just see a picture of a dead animal or dead fish, it's not that attractive. But when you see it alive and moving and everything, it transmits other things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, amazing. I'm really looking forward to seeing that, actually, because I personally think they're beautiful. Like, they've got this like amazing like silvery blue color. And then they've got this kind of little protrusion on the nose, right? It looks like a little elephant trunk, which I guess is where the name comes from, I think. Yeah. And they're a chimera.
They are chimeras, yes. Yeah, they're like really good in senses of the electromagnetic system to detect prey beneath the sand. They feed a lot on bivalves, everything with shells or crabs, all those kind of animals, invertebrates. They feed on them, and so they're all the time going like searching under the sand for this species. What's also interesting is, like, males, for example, as they don't have teeth, particularly as sharks, they have like plates to crush all these shells. As well, most people might know, sharks to copulate, they have to bite the female to grab her and make the internal fertilization. But for this species, they have two ways of making this behavior of grabbing the female, and one is like a very strange tenaculum in the forehead with tooth. It's like they have like little tooth, and yeah, it's difficult to describe only with words, but with that they will grab like the lateral fin, and also besides that they have like two kind of arms right next to the pelvic fins to grab literally the female. It's like two pelvic how do you clasp? I don't know how to say in English, sorry.
No, I get what you mean, like kind of like just some sort of like grabbing
claws.
Like claws,
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, listeners can't see this, but I'm gesturing wildly as to what it might look like. But yeah, how bizarre. And this is just like why we were saying, like in the beginning, the more you learn about like sharks, chimeras, all of the chondrichthyans, you're just you can't help but just want to know more, because you're like, they're just so bizarre and strange, and there's all these things that we like don't know about them. It's incredible. But you said before, when I was reading, when I was doing my research for this episode, I read that you carry out a lot of your field work largely in the dark.
Yes.
Why is that? Why are you hanging around without the lights on?
Well, because our lovely American elephant fish likes to feed on night. So it's not that you go to shore and just start fishing and, oh, look, American elephant fish in like during the day. It has to be dark. If the sea is really calm and transparency, you are not going to have that much of activity. You need a little bit of rough sea, because they are not fast swimmers, so to avoid also predators and to have more chances of getting prey, I think they need to be like in conditions where they can see and the other ones no. So yeah, we had to go and look for them at very late hours sometimes.
How late is late?
Well, sometimes I ended in the lab at 3 a.m. Suddenly we were fishing from 10 o'clock to 12 and nothing happened. And suddenly 12:30 we start having 1 or 2 fish. And yeah, so then to process the blood sample, you end up in the lab very late.
Yeah, need a lot of coffee to get yourself through that. But once you've actually caught this specimen, kind of say you got back to the lab, or you're out at sea, you're fishing for them, you catch one finally at midnight or whenever it is. What do you do then? So like, what kind of data are you collecting for your research?
Yes, the main thing we look for is the blood. So what we do is we make a blood extraction from the caudal vein. We catch the fish, we take it out of the water, we cover the head with a wet cloth, so as it doesn't get like really stressed. I mean, there's a little bit of stress, of course, but we take it out, we try to cover, and we place it with the belly up in a recipient with like a mattress with a hole, so it gets like steady over there. And the first thing and the most quickly is to get the blood. It's not that easy to take blood from a fish. I had to learn, and it was quite interesting. So I take the blood sample, and then we just measure it, and we weight it, and then we return it to water. And that's our main part. But also, as we are in places where there's a lot of recreational fishermen or other people making use of the activity, most of them, they just take the fish and they will take it to eat. And that's when, well, we made a lot of relationship also with a lot of fishermen, because whenever we saw someone took a American elephant fish, we just get near and say, okay, we will need this sample. So that's when we get advantage and get some organs of interest to measure the amount of these compounds that we are talking about, right? So it's not only to see, okay, what's the effect or how is the immune system and the reproductive hormones in these species, but we also need to know if they are contaminated or not. That's how more or less it works. And once we have the blood in a little fridge and everything, then as quick as we can, we go to the lab and we do all the procedure there. We have to centrifugate. Most of things are also used in veterinary, for example. But yeah, it's very interesting to start knowing all this stuff about the species.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always in awe of how quickly you have to work, because you know, when you've got a live specimen on board and you're having to take everything that you need, but try not to stress out the animal and try to do it as quickly as possible so you can release it. You must get a like proper adrenaline rush from doing it. Now, you don't have to answer this next question because I'm being a little bit cheeky with this one, but do you have any findings yet that you'd be happy to share, like, on the podcast?
We don't have any concrete result yet, because we just finished all the procedures and we haven't analyzed all the results yet. But for example, what we do have now, but that also wasn't like analyzed and compared with other regions or other things, we have measured in some ovaries and liver and in gills. We have measured aromatic hydrocarbons, and also we have detected a specific insecticide that is well known here and with a lot of use. It's called chlorpyrifos, and we have detected that in gills, in liver and gonads. But as I told you, we haven't yet compared it with a control site, and we haven't compared it with other regions. So it's like, okay, we know that we are having this. It's alarming, but I don't want to say, oh no, we found contamination, when maybe yet it hasn't been analyzed. So what we are doing now is finishing all the procedures, and once we have all the results, then we need to start doing all the statistics and the comparisons and making the conclusion, looking what happens in other places. And so, yes, at this very moment, it's like we don't have yet concrete results.
Yeah, that's totally fine. It was just on the off chance, but I know it's early days, and you still got like analysis to do and things. But I mean, we'll just have to have you back on when you have those results and when you're ready to share them, because it's just really fascinated to find out what comes out of your research. Yeah. Something that's really important to you is outreach and communication. And we're coming to the end of our time here, but I was interested to know if you could deliver like one message to our listeners about marine pollution and chondrichthyans, or, you know, anything that you like. What would your kind of takeaway message be?
That would be a long answer, but maybe just to summarize it would be like, personally, like I think everyone needs to start being more self-aware of what we are consuming, in like in which amount. Also, it's like we need to be more responsible consumers, and it's not just about plastic, or one use plastic and that kind of things, you know. I mean, that's really important. It's great because plastic is one of the most bigger pollutants now issues, all right. But I think that all things that we consume, from electronics to products at our homes, or if we see, for example, I don't know, not long ago I was in a meeting of the building administration and that kind of things, and I saw that they were using these very industrial insecticides in the entrance of the building, just to kill some little herbs, because they didn't want it there. And it was like, no, guys. No, we don't have to use this. Like, I mean, we can take it with a hand. No, but it's difficult because, okay, yeah, it's more harmful to use an insecticide when it's not needed, you know? So there are a lot of things that first we need to be more self-aware, I think. And then if we see things that we don't like and how they are being treated, we need to start like exposing them. Right.
Yeah, totally. And I think you kind of touched on this earlier, but like people can use their voice as well. So, you know, you can say no, talk to your family members, talk to your friends, you know, spread the word. Because a lot of people don't realize just how much of our actions are getting into the ocean, or sort of getting into the seas and sort of becoming part of that system.
Exactly. But I'm also conscious that there's things that goes way beyond us, you know, like a common citizen might think, oh no, but how how can I influence when you have like these thousands acres being fertilized with this, or putting these insecticides and these kind of things, and you can't control that. So, but as citizens, I think we can't demand for policies and correct measurements. And I think that it starts also with the consumption. I mean, we need to start asking ourselves from what part came this that I'm consuming? How was this treated? And those kind of things. So at the end, maybe if that is reproducible in big amounts of people, the business has to change and adapt and try to aim for more sustainable practices.
Yeah. Totally. It's just a lot of little actions from everybody makes a huge difference, right? But we're coming to the end. This has been such a fascinating and really thoughtful conversation, and I'm now going to ruin it with a really silly question. But we ask this last question to every single guest, and it is: if you could be any species of shark, ray, skate, or chimera in the world, what would you be and why? And I'm having to put a caveat on this because people are saying, oh, I don't want to be that species because I'll get fished, or this species is affected by this. So it's kind of like in an ideal world where everything's lovely and there are no human impacts. What species would you be?
It's a nice question. I think I will go for the leopard shark.
Oh, nice.
Because they are like reef sharks, and like everyone that have been in a reef will know that it's beautiful and it's incredible. Also, they don't have to swim all the time to breathe. That gives them an advantage, like the idea of never stopping. Like if I think of being another shark, it's kind of like, okay, I don't know if I want to be swimming all the time, obligated. I saw a picture of a leopard shark like sleeping like a dog, so like in the bottom, really really chill.
Yeah, just chill for a bit.
I would love to see one like live, be sharing that moment. I haven't got the chance yet, but yes, I think that if I had to choose one to be, I would be a leopard shark.
Amazing. And see, you need to take that off your bucket list now. I'll try and get the hammerheads in the Galapagos, and you can try and get a leopard shark on a reef. There we go.
Of course, yes.
But that was a great answer, and this has been fantastic. You've been absolutely brilliant. And yeah, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for coming on the World of Sharks podcast.
Thank you. It was an honor. I really enjoyed it.
This podcast was brought to you by the Save Our Seas Foundation. It was hosted and produced by me, Isla Hodgson. Our amazing visuals are by Jamie Silver. Our beautiful logo is by Nicola Poulos, and the wonderful jingle you can hear right now is by David Knight. An enormous thank you to Franco for taking the time to come on the podcast and answering all my questions about pollution and the American elephant fish. And if you want to follow along with his work, you can do by heading to the Save Our Seas website and looking at his project leader page. I will post a link to that in the show notes of this episode. And you can also find Franco on Twitter. His handle is @Franco_C89. You can also find a transcript of this episode, more information about Franco's project, and Franco himself in the show notes on the World of Sharks website. And thank you at home for listening. If you like this episode, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. It really means a lot to us, and it helps more people to find out how amazing sharks are and find amazing people like Franco who are working to make the world a better place for sharks and rays. And if you want a question answered on the podcast or a topic covered, please feel free to get in touch. We love hearing from you. You can email isla@saveourseas.com, or you can find us on social media. We are @Save Our Seas Foundation on Instagram and @Save Our Seas on Twitter. Alrighty, have a awesome week, and we will see you next time.